Reverend Davis moved to New York in 1949, and a little bit above New York City, because Annie got a job. So they moved from Durham, North Carolina, to not upstate New York, but a little bit above New York City. And Tiny Robinson somehow got connected with Reverend Davis, and Tiny was Leadbelly's niece. And Leadbelly was living in New York City, and around Leadbelly there was Woody Guthrie, Cisco Houston, and there was a whole little folk thing happening, Pete Seeger, Alan Lomax, and they would bring Reverend Davis into these hootenannies. And hootenannies in those days were a bunch of people sitting around and playing songs together. So he sort of became part of the New York folk scene. Everyone knew he existed. At the same time, he was still singing on the streets of Harlem. Eventually, some of his tunes became popular or popularized, his arrangements of some of the tunes, by some of these groups that grew out of this folk revival. Peter, Paul, and Mary did Samson and Delilah, and they went up to him and said, "Oh, Reverend Davis, is that one of your tunes?" And of course he said no. He had learned it from a Blind Willie Johnson record, and they said, "Okay, it's one of your tunes." And they credited Reverend Davis with it. At the same time, Candyman had become a staple of many, many folk singers, Dave Van Ronk, Ramblin Jack Elliot, and these were people that would usually say, "I learned this tune from Reverend Gary Davis," and Candyman was not a hit. It was never on a hit record, but it was definitely a big hit amongst the folk revival musicians. It was a tune you had to play. So the name of Reverend Davis was always out there. He was almost taken for granted in a way because he was always available. It wasn't like a Son House that all of a sudden was rediscovered, or a Mississippi John Hurt that was rediscovered. Reverend Davis was always there. He never disappeared, never disappeared. And Brownie McGhee moved up from Tennessee to New York, and he was living in Harlem, and he had a school. And Reverend Davis used to teach at the school as well, and he was friendly with Brownie. And he was always there. So there was no like great moment of discovery. Oh, here's this musician no one knew about. Everyone always knew that he existed.
One day I was walking along, I heard